draw a tag for the 10 zone, a bull, for the Pennsylvania elk season for 2023. And the zone, my camp is in zone 11. I put in, I never even checked the website or anything for my name. Good friend of mine come over, we wanted to put a new attic fan in. And he's looking through the website and he knows my first name, but really wasn't didn't really know my last name. He says, what zone did you go for? I said, zone 10. And he says, what's your first name? I said, Eric. And he knew, he says, what's your last name? So I started spelling my last name, H-O-P-P, and he took right off from there. E-R-S-T-E-A-D, Hopperstead. He said, you got a bull tag from zone 10. But I've been hunting up in here in Clearfield County for a long time and have a beautiful camp. And just to be able to stay at the camp and hunt from that camp, and our guide Brian stayed with us on Sunday night. I got a packet in the mail from the state, and I looked down through it, and I saw Hicks Run Outfitters. Well, here I trout fish on that creek, Hicks Run. So first one I called him up, had a nice conversation with Jeff, and he says, why don't you come up? I'd love to meet you. So he said, I told him where I had a camp on Merrill Road off of Ardell. And he says, well, that would be great. You could stay there, So I said, hey, everything started clicking. We talked for like a half an hour. And I got such an honest feeling out of him and the conversation we had. I mean, everything he was telling me, we're going to get you a bull. I have, good guides here and everything. So we went and met him the following week with the president of the camp, Larry Means. So we went up in there and we were talking to Jeff for a while at the table, and he was showing me all his mounts and everything in his room. I'm overwhelmed, and I see this bull there and I think, is it possible that I could shoot a bull from Pennsylvania? So I said, Larry, what do you think about this guy? And he says, you got the right guy. So I gave him a down payment, and it was easy as that. So I really, like I said, just Jeff talks to you like a human being, treats you like a family, and I feel like I'm with family now. Okay, first time I met Brian Rumsky was at our camp. He came down and wanted to meet me. He was out scouting earlier. He wanted to come and meet me, and it was just a wonderful thing. So he said, okay, we're going to go for a ride. And the first time we were out on the 5 trails in Simahoney, we saw a bull and 6 cows. And it was just, I was just overwhelmed with the knowledge he had that I just never realized how much went into elk hunting. It was just an amazing adventure that I knew it was going to be good with him. So Brian said to me, you can't shoot enough for a walk. You need to exercise too. Because I've had a knee problem, and I got actually a cortisone shot 2 weeks before the season. And I was able to pick up my pace a little bit walking. Jeff invited us over to have dinner, and I got to meet all the guides and all the people who were going to be involved in each hunt, whoever drew a tag. And the food was excellent, and it was one big family, you know what I mean? So we left my camp exactly 4:30, looked at my watch, we left. Took us a half hour to get there, and we pull in to the place, back up to the gate. And not 5 minutes later, 2 trucks came by slowing down. They wanted to turn into our gate. And Brian said, hey, they shouldn't they should not come in and bother us, because this is a hunter's, kind of a hunter's thing, so being respectful for each other. So we started walking in, and it started steady rain. So we're walking in, and we're getting to the point where the fields are. And Brian's looking at his watch, it's like 6:30, and he said, okay, we wait a little bit longer. We were about probably 150 yards out, so we didn't spook him. And he looks in the distance, 3 telephone poles up, he sees a nice bull elk in the distance. So we back up. We decide we're going to a little bit of an angle in the woods. We're going to angle to him and try to come out where he is. So we did that, came out through the woods, looked, the elk was gone. So we went back to where we might see for the evening. He says, we're in here for the day. So it's about 9:30. And I said, it's pretty cold, Brian. I mean, I don't want to throw the towel in, but he says, I got a fire. So we're out there setting a fire with with wet wood that's beyond wet. He had a little bit of fire starters. So he said, start out with like little pencils, and then you go to thumbs, and then you get bigger.
Well, we got a little rained on this morning. We got in here, it was pouring, of course. We did see a shooter bull, but he was 800 yards away. 600 to 800. Tried to make a play on him. didn't work out. It's tough. Everybody's soaked even through the rain gear now, so we're trying to warm up, and I'm gonna sit here all day because there's just way too much sign to leave it. The bulls are here, and we're gonna kill one. So let's hope it's tonight.
So I got completely dried off. It's about 1:45. And we had a tarp set up in the woods earlier so we could sit under to stay, keep the rain off it. So we went to that tarp, we got all wrapped up. So at 2 o'clock, we were like in this little slough. And he says, he just said, real quiet, he says, we're at the right spot. They're going to come out here. Fresh beds he saw, because he took a walk after me and Al sat underneath the tarp for a while. He was gone for like an hour and a half. And he wanted to see what kind of sign he really, he was on his own to kind of do more scouting more than we were together, And all of a sudden, he said, here they come. It's like 5:45. It was to have a little shooting time left. He said, here they come. About 30 cows and 2 smaller bulls right across the slough where we were sitting, probably 100 yards. Here comes a bull right out of the brush. So Brian goes around the tree, he looks, he said, yes, that's a nice shooting. I was not ever more calmer at that moment. I was thinking about all the things I did to prepare for this moment. And I had a shooting stick, and I just, kept them on them. And then them guys said actually the other cows were starting to run down the hill towards us. I'm thinking, wow, maybe they're coming to, down to where he is. So I pull up my gun and I'm just waiting to see him turn broadside. He turned broadside, put him right there, right straight above his shoulder. One shot, and they said, you got him. So he ran across a little bit, stumbling. He went up about 100 yards on the hill, stayed in the power lines, never went back in the woods, and all of a sudden, bam, he's down. And Brian said, bull down. Frazier died. He could call the bull Frazier. Frazier's down. And I'm like, you really, is he really down, So I got up, I started dancing around. I gave Brian a hug. I gave Al a hug. And it's like I'm doing the Hopperstead dance. Every time we got a deer, me and my brother would kind of dance around and celebrate, that we're happy, because each kill is different, and that's why we like to hunt. We enjoy the meat. But I danced around, and it was just getting dark. We came out of our little spot, I got up to the elk, and I just said, it's a beautiful 6x7. It had the white tips and real dark, and Brian said to me, this is a real trophy. This is a nice elk. I said it wouldn't have mattered at that time. I was just so overwhelmed. I couldn't really concentrate on the horns. I was like so happy, and then I thank God at that moment.
You got him. Touch his eyeball. 6x6. Yep. Yep. He's pretty heavy. That's a nice bull.
Brian had to walk back 2.5 miles to make a phone call. He had to drive a little bit to make a phone call. So it started raining. So me and Al were underneath this tarp. Picture us. We're underneath this tarp with our headlamps. So I'm talking. He's sitting on the hindquarters, and I'm sitting in my little chair up by the elk killers, and we're just sitting there chatting about how much fun this was and everything. And like an hour and a half later, we heard, "Hey, you still in there?" And Brian videoing us under the tarp. I guess he said that. So, he said, "Yeah, we're just," and the elk was keeping us warm because it had to be. It was raining. It was a freezing rain. It was windy, but it's just But all of a sudden, when Brian showed up, he said he would help cut the elk. When he showed up, the rain stopped and the wind stopped. Just like I said, it was just an experience that, and I just said to myself, man, just, like I said, these two people I have with me, how special this hunt was being there with me and enjoying it. Alex, like I said, he shot a couple bulls himself, and he says this is probably one of the best hunts he's ever been on because he got to do it as a spectator. He said he saw the bullet where it hit. He said, he knew right then and there that bull was going to go down. So we got in the woods at 5 and we got 11. We were in the woods 18 hours. So I got to call her about 11:30. She was just ready to go to bed. And she just said, I knew you were going to get one today, She said, was a little worried because she didn't hear from me. I said, I'm going to try to call you tonight. I'm just so glad that she was able to share this and how much help she was so helpful. She bought the groceries for the trip up, always being positive, never saying you're away from home too long. And I told her I needed to do this and I won't be home very much. And she was very understanding, and I can't wait to see her tomorrow night and certainly give her a big hug. So you definitely want to go with a guide, because you're going out to do something maybe you never did before. You don't realize how big that animal is. And that guide service helps you do everything. Helps you get in there, find your animal you want. It shows you, on trying to get them out and how much you need that guide service. Hicks Run Outfitters is a family to me now. So they just, I think Brian seemed to me like he went beyond what he needed to do, but he tells me this is what he does. He promised me a bull, and there was no doubt in my mind that he would have got me a bull. And his support from the beginning end. Jeff, how much he talked to me, showed me around. Just unbelievable. Just made me feel like family, just welcomed me with open arms every time I came. And when we got back 11:30. He said, we have to skin this right away. Quarter, they cut it in half. He said, we got to get the steam out. But you don't realize those little things that they do save your meat, because that elk holds so much heat. She's seen the steam coming off this elk when they cut him, and he let him hang for 2 days. I think they're above the other outfitters. I think they do more than, just my opinion, but just how they make you feel like family. I think they go beyond what they need to do. And then Janet, his wife, and his daughters cooked for us. It's fantastic. So I was hoping to lose a couple of pounds on this trip, but, so I said a little prayer before it got dark, and I think the Lord gave me that opportunity to get that out. So I'm very happy, very happy. These are happy tears. Nothing wrong with a grown man. Had to tear up a little bit, but thank you to my dad and heaven. So, yep, very nice, very nice. That's all I'm gonna say. Very good, very happy. I'm just happy beyond happy right now.